Hi, this is Vinay from Ideation Infotech. I would like to start with a basic introduction about myself. Uh, I'm an attorney based out of India. I am also an engineer, so by combining these two fields, I started working as a patent analyst 12 years ago. And after that, I've worked with a large number of corporates and law firms, specifically on the matters of intellectual property. If I would be very particular, the more focus on patents. Today, I would like to share my knowledge with you so that it can add value for your strategies when you work on startups, and if you're working with a big corporate, so that you can work on your strategies where you can get the maximum value out of your assets. Before we move forward, I'd like to set up the agenda, what I'm going to cover today. Like you're seeing my slide, I'll start with a basic introduction of all the assets, intellectual property assets that we are dealing with in our day-to-day life, which will be our start point. Once I'll discuss this, I'll move more into the patents and explain, or I would say specifically elaborate with some of the case studies, how it adds value to us. That would be my second agenda point for today. Thereafter, I'll also like to take up some of the case studies that how we can commercialize or get value out of these IP assets. Because no one would like to invest in money into some of the, I would say, even the tangible assets which are not going to give any return. So we also look into some kind of return when we invest into these kind of assets. Now, if I talk about the commercialization, there could be different options, but today I'll focus specifically on patents. Some of the light I'll throw onto trademarks with some of the case studies. I'll go into industrial designs as well because that is also a core essence over there, but I will not touch upon much into kind of contractual obligation, which is also part of intellectual assets. So to begin with, like I said, that I'll just try to cover up the basic things today first. So the patent usually goes with a kind of invention. So if we imagine any product which is new in the industry or which is being developed by the companies with small innovation, when there is any invention or a small innovation, then it calls for the patents. When I say patents, it's specifically focusing on the technological aspects or advancements that any company does. They can protect that invention or innovation through the legal right in different geographies because patents are a geographical right instead of a international right, I would say. When I say not an international right, we need to be very clear. There is no international patent. There is no authority that can give you any intellectual property across the countries. It is just like a similar aspects as that of tangible assets. So you buy a property. If you buy property in Australia, you will get rights to use over there. You cannot take your land somewhere else. Whereas in case of these intellectual property or intangible assets, you can go in other countries, but you have to get it registered over there. You have to claim your right over there. With this brief, I'd like to go back to my topic, intellectual property. So the first thing is patents. It gets filed for inventions. That means some technological innovation. Another area is very correlated to it is industrial design, which products protects your product's aesthetics. It has nothing to do with the invention. So if you file a design patent, you cannot protect any technological advancement. It is only for aesthetics. Usually the companies which are making furniture which is looking good for aesthetics, some of the companies which are making bottle designs, those can go for the aesthetics because aesthetics also have some value for some of the companies or some of the industries. Specifically, if I have to talk about uh, smartphone industry, Apple has a good design, so that has a value for them. Another aspect in intellectual property is trademarks. Usually, trademarks are filed by the companies when they connect with the clients so that they know their brand with a specific design, logo, or word name. Nowadays, we are also saying 3D trademarks, we are also saying trademarks are sense, and many other things. But the basic sense comes from how we look into any brand. So that's where the trademark starts with. And we know that McDonald's is one of the good example that if we see that arc of McDonald's from far away, we understand that this is McDonald's. So that's how the trademark plays a good role into your business. Now, some of the aspects I already spoke about, I have just given some of the senses here. So you need only uniqueness to get protection for industrial design, whereas how you write claims will define your commercialization aspect in terms of patents. So patent does not need only uniqueness, but also you have to draft your claim very clearly how you want to commercialize, which I'll touch upon in the later part of my invention. Another aspect which we have to focus upon while talking about patents is how is your technology different? It's not only about unique, it's also about how you implement it differently, along with what commercial value you create out of that invention. Because sometimes the things are novel, which are not done by anyone else, but that doesn't make any usefulness for industrial applicability. So, in nutshell, I would like to say there are three core essence of any patent or idea that can be patented. I would say it has to be novel, that is unique, which is also the essence for industrial design and trademarks. But here there are two more aspects. One is it shall have some industrial applicability, as well as it is not obvious to anyone who has significant knowledge, I would say that in that particular industry. In legal words, we call it as a posita, person ordinary skilled in art. A few countries also look into to the aspects of how you solve the existing problem in the industry as a determining factor that whether it has industrial applicability or not. As I said earlier, trademarks are primarily how people perceive you, how people recognize you. So this is what I want to say here. Whereas design is just aesthetic feel. Lastly, I would like to touch upon the copyright as well. Patents helps you to promote your innovation, whereas copyright helps you to protect your creative work. It could be software, the way of doing something uniquely, and any product like a smartphone is a combination of copyright, trademark, industrial design, and patents, which I'm going to take up after this. Here I would like to discuss what can be patented. So like I said that I'll be focusing more on patents because we are seeing war in many countries on patents, Samsung versus Apple. There are many companies which are fighting in a similar way. So let's first talk about the patent. What can be patented? You made a product by copying someone. Can you patent it? No. There is no problem that you're trying to solve. You just came up with a fact that this can be done. It can be novel, but is it solving any problem? If yes, then it will be having industrial applicability. If no, there is no industrial applicability, so there is no solution, so there is no invention. So the first criteria for any idea to be patented is invention or solution to something. Another is it has a commercial application. So if I make something which doesn't have any commercial application, there is less probability. Even the abstract ideas, which are really great, but we know that that cannot be implementable, those are not patentable. Every country has their different sections, articles, laws, which stop people to protect abstract ideas. Another condition is novelty or inventive step. If it is not totally unique, at least it shall have some inventive step. So you know that touchscreen is for there for a long time, But Apple did give a great user interface for people how they can interact with it. So just an example, a bounce back effect that they launched in their smartphone, iPhone, which was copied by many other companies and they got litigated. So that was an inventive step. Although they didn't invent touchscreen, but they create a software that play with that touchscreen to create an impact on the users, which made it more interesting. Combining these all three aspects, patentability of any idea is getting determined. I'm taking an example here to make it more elaborative to you. Let's suppose I made a smartwatch having a primary display, secondary display, primary power source for primary display, secondary power source for secondary display. It has two purposes where the secondary display is used to present the date and time to the user, and secondary display turns on when the primary display gets switched off due to power outage at the power source. Now, looking at this solution, when I use smartwatch, I purposely use it for different applications like looking at my alerts coming from my iPhone, or even if I'm using Android phone, I'm just looking at some alerts, I'm getting some healthcare notifications, or I'm getting messages. There could be different purposes. So that is a key purpose of primary display. But you know that if we are doing so much of things from a smartwatch, there's a big risk that after 18, 20 hours maximum that we can get a battery because of size limitation for that particular battery to be fixed into the smartwatch. So let's suppose you're traveling a lot and suddenly your display battery gone off and your display is off. Now here, your purpose of having a watch is not met. So therefore, some person came with a thought that why not use a secondary power source for secondary display, just like a normal watch. So when I can't use a smartwatch, at least I use a watch. So it has an industrial applicability. But at the same time, he thought of a design which I've just written here, and I divided those components in front of you. Whenever you come up with such a thought process, at ideation stage, you have to divide your idea into different portions so that you can determine which particular component or element of your invention is unique. And then search for the prior art for each and every aspect and see that what you have done unique. So when we did study in this case, I identified a couple of documents which are disclosing the same components and we try to map them on each and every element. And based on this, when all the elements are already disclosed in a prior art or any document which is much before your thought process, it becomes a non-patentable aspect. That means although you have some invention, but someone has already done it, so you might infringe them, so you will not get any patent for that particular invention unless you say that you have done something unique from this particular thing. So I have just put asterisks here to take an example. Let's suppose I say that secondary display is not a different display, but it's an integral part of the primary display. That means when the secondary display gets first primary display gets off, it becomes transparent, and the secondary display comes forward. That could be a uniqueness. That could be an invention because it might not be written in that particular document. Similarly, if I say that the power source for secondary display is given in the band of a watch instead of in the dial. So in that case, it could be also an invention. So we need to really understand what we have done differently. Moving forward, when I discuss about the ideation, every company, even it's a startup, institute, industry, they shall have a process to determine what is patentable, where they shall focus upon, because you know that the patents are not a easy and very cheap I would say that instead of cheap, that's the wrong word. I would say that uh, specifically, it's a capital intensive task if you have to go to each and every country. So therefore, we need to have a process implemented over there. So one example is, let's suppose if I go and look at already what is happening in the industry and then I create an invention. So nowadays, everyone is working on healthcare applications which can be embedded into their smartwatches. So let's suppose if I create something like this, which increase specifically, I would say in the watch, accuracy of any determination. So likewise, BP, heart rate. If we improve it to that extent that any company working in the space would like to get that particular invention, and it will add competitive edge to the company who is going to launch it. So this kind of commercialization aspect we have to keep in our mind before we work on any invention. That's what we want to highlight in this whole ecosystem. You can be working with a corporate, so then you comes under the departments. You need to look at your available capabilities, which technology you know, what you know. Then this research and planning committee can be a virtual thing. It is what you do before you start an innovation. You look into the technology and market trends. You look into your established contact base because you need to see that where you can sell, how you can sell. So all you have to plan at this stage. Then if you're working as a startup, you are also managing your budget. If you're working in a big organization, then you're taking budgets from the management. They might say that, okay, this year we have only this much of budgets. Do whatever you want to do. So then you have to plan and prioritize different things that you can do. Once you do this research and planning, only then you move to the R&D roadmap. Why I'm saying that it is crucial for any invention or patent, because if you do not make such kind of roadmap, you will not be able to commercialize your assets. Like I said earlier, if you're filing a patent application, you're getting it granted, you're going to invest a lot of capital, and if you're not able to get value out of it, then it's a liability, it's not an asset. So to make a patent an asset, it is important to determine what we are planning to do. Now, in this R&D roadmap or commercialization, you might look into launch of a product. You might think of going with a licensing. You might go with a leasing model. You might go with a partnership, but everything has to be defined. Because when you go for a licensing, you have to have a broader patent application. You don't have any chances of infringement because you're not launching a product. But in case you are launching a product, you need to go with the freedom to operate to understand whom I can infringe in future. So there's so many complexity from a legal perspective that are associated with any R&D roadmap. And I would recommend to involve some attorney or consultants at this stage who have in and out knowledge of these kind of aspects. Now, once you plan this, you do invention, then there shall be invention review committee, which is going to determine whether that particular invention is novel or not. So now I have to go back to the three criterias. That is solving a problem, that is targeting an application which is long felt need of industry, and it is novel or inventive. If all these three conditions are met, only then it would be patentable. And invention review committee does the same thing for inventors. They verify it. If you're a startup or you're doing it by yourself, you can also act as invention review committee by taking into consideration those three parameters. After passing through it, we go to the invention catalog. That means you might go with a patent attorney. You can file a patent application. You can ask them to file a patent application into different geographies depending upon uh, the kind of market. So maybe you can say that, okay, US, Europe, which are IP intensive areas, so you can go with that. You can go into Japan industry. You can uh, go into China. You can go into India, depending upon the markets. Because just an example, if I talk about the chemical and pharmaceutical, India might be a good market. Whereas if you talk about the software, India might not be because software or computer program per se are not patentable in India. Now moving towards one example, how the companies works on this. So every company define their filing strategies. Every company, startup, every individual. So they define their industry based on different parameters. One is the market potential, the second one is the technology potential. So when you're going to design your strategy, just think of how big is the market potential. Is it far-fetched? Is it going to come in 2 years, 3 years down the line? Similarly, how good is your technology based on the parameter I defined you? Taking one example, if I talk about the fuel cell technology, you have a great fuel cell technology, but you know that the market is not ready to accept it for the next 10 years, then it might not be a great investment for you. But there is a contingency if it flies, if the market flies, then there is some probability. So you can go with strategy B or strategy A depending upon how the market is behaving, where you where you are playing a role in a value chain, what kind of IP asset you want to create, what kind of commercialization strategy. So ideally speaking, the three parameters that would define which strategy you're going to follow. One, how you want to commercialize. Number two, when the market is going to fly. Number three, how big competitive edge this technology is providing you. Based on these three parameters, you can define your strategy. The strategy could be you're gonna fully own your IP, you are going to partner with someone as a strategic partner, you want to license it. This all has to be decided at this particular stage. And based on that, you can select the categories, whether you want to go with a category A, B, C, what kind of I would say that revenues you want to generate. Taking one example, as everyone is familiar with Apple, so I just picked up that. So let's see how the companies are protecting their assets. So if I look at iPhone, they have approximately 300 registered trademarks, starting from their logo with every word mark they use, like AirPrint, Airport, Cocoa, whatever they are trying to launch, they are branding it. Out of the 300, 50 are just related to iPhone. Logo in gray color, logo in different color, everything has been protected over there. If I talk about patents, which I just discussed right now, it's not covered in a single invention. It has been covered in more than 1600 utility patents filed only on camera and optical sensors by iPhone or Apple, I would say. So this means a single component has more than 1600 patents, a unique invention which went through the review committee, which went through the whole process of categorizing what is going to be more valuable for them. So if you're a startup, you are going to think of something. Believe me, it's a capital intensive thing. Strategize it well so that you can get good investment based on your good patent portfolio or other assets like trademarks and everything. So strategize it before you invest your money. A single patent can only be licensed easily, but if you're going to launch a product, there is a huge risk that you can also get in notification from different companies on infringement if you do not go with a appropriate strategy. Then comes a design patent. They have more than 4,500 patents. 40 plus design patents are related to aesthetics of iPhone only. That's where they worked a lot. These aesthetics have indirect value that it can be easily hold into the hands. There's so many things that you have to look into. So IP production is a strategy. It's not only about hiring an attorney. It's about getting a best partner who can understand your business case, who can devise a strategy, who can file patent applications for you. There's a lot to do on IP protection. So I would just request everyone not to underestimate this aspect. Another thing I touched upon is commercialization. Apple is pure play, a company which is working on a product launch and they have done it really well. I want to share one example of commercialization by other strategies as well. So I'm just going to move my camera a bit up so that you can see it. See, Dolby is another company which has different business strategies, all three possible here, and they have different IP strategies altogether that you have to follow if you're following their business strategies. So if you're going to do a product sales like them where they're selling cinema products, you have to work on two IP strategies. The first one is the defensive protection, and the second one is the freedom to operate that you have to do. Why? Because patents act as a support function in case of product sale. They do not act as a key enabler. So that means you do not need to license. So therefore, the right strategy is to protect your invention, specifically your competitive edge, and then do a thorough freedom to operate study to understand how much is the risk of infringing someone else's assets. Do plan your financials accordingly by taking a contingency if that particular company comes after you, how much you have to spend, how much you might need to pay. So that has to be strategized at that stage. Now, another area is working upon a branded technology licensing. So Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision. So you're not investing on any hardware or any manufacturing. What you're going to license is patent, know-how, brand licensing. So you need to be very sure that the patents are key enabler. If you do not protect your technology, people would learn from you and they will not give any penny to you. So in that case, you need to be very sure what you have protected, how you have protected so that no one can do a bypass of your products. You need to be very sure on a right mix of patents, trademarks, because it's gonna be your brand. People are gonna kind of understand. If Dolby is there, they know that there is gonna be a good sound quality. So you have to protect your brand. You have to copyright your license, softwares, whatever you're giving to them, because these are your enablers. Another one is patent licensing. Here, it is much more crucial to be strong on your patent filing and specifically prosecution because you are going to license your patents and you have no other asset to generate money. You have no other thing to generate money except for licensing. So you cannot file a patent application where the claim is not drafted with a thorough due diligence. Because if you miss a single component, you're going to lose out all the money that you have invested over there. I'll take one example from my uh, real world experience. I worked with a company based out of India. They filed a patent application specifically on remote ordering in 2000. But their attorney, which they didn't pay well, they asked them to write the patent application only in 10 hours, wrote a word, local server, in their claims, the right that they claim from the patent office. That local server can never be removed. So where they could have charged a lot of royalties or licensing fee from all the companies who are giving today home delivery for the food products, those were out of their purview and they lost a big market. So I would say that don't underestimate the value of your attorney of a good parrot search that shall be done before finalizing your strategy. Because if you're going to go for patent licensing, a small loophole in your claims would make it zero from $1 billion deal. Here I have taken one more example of commercialization, specifically from litigation perspective. Let's suppose you are going against some other company, then how you have to prove each every component that how you have claimed what has been done over there. So we go into this deep dive. But I think today it's not that important, so I'm just going to uh, kind of go out of this soon. But I would say that where the patent licensing is being done through litigation or pitch book, the last strategy, you have to make this kind of studies well before you run after any other company. Now I'm going to talk quickly about, in 2 minutes, about the brand protection. So that I have picked some of the cases from India, but this can change worldwide with different scenarios. I would say that a brand is very crucial and it has association with different companies. There is a trademark that can be filed in different geographies, but also there are unregistered marks where they've become well known and therefore no one else can file a trademark application over there. I'll take one example. So Xerox, everyone knows that they became so familiar that their trademark was cancelled specifically for photocopying because now it's a kind of common terminology on for photocopying is equivalent to Xerox in many countries. So they didn't get any right. But here, what I want to highlight that it's not only that the two companies might have the same name, they're working in a similar space, but if their products are quite different. So here I've taken one example that one company was working on a milk product, the second company was working on a restaurant business. Although they are both from a food market, but it's a clear distinction that the first company is only selling a dairy product, whereas the second one is selling prepared food products. So there is a clear distinction. So the two companies might have the same name, but they shall have their different logos, they shall have their different business segments. Quite similar to we have Mac for food market. McDonald's is using Mac as a kind of prefix to all of their product. Similarly, MacBook, Mac Pro, all are being used by Apple in their products, which are in electronics markets. Although they have the same name, but everyone can easily find a distinction between the two product lines. So therefore, brands are on that way. So with this, I would like to conclude my session here on IP. I touched briefly upon patents. I discussed a bit about the commercialization strategy as a recap, where there are different strategies that are followed by the companies, and you have to have a different IP strategies that has to be aligned with respect to your business strategy and what kind of role patents are acting. So you can just look into this. Then how the companies, corporate houses are managing their innovation, I would say specifically innovation cycle, innovation management, how they're doing it. We as a startup can do where a single person is playing different roles, but as you grow as an organization, you have to follow the complete strategy. Similarly, I just try to explain you what are the different criteria that has to be followed for patenting, which is solution, application, novelty. So you have to look into this, but I would recommend that whenever you're looking into these kind of aspects, please hire a professional that can be an attorney, that can be a IP consultants. There are a lot many companies. I won't say that just reach out to me. There are many experts who are working in a similar way. So I would recommend every company to go with them. With this, if you still have any questions, you can drop us an email on our email ID vinay.sharma@idsil.com. I'll try to get back to you with your answers as soon as possible for me. And that's it from my side. Thanks a lot. For any question, I'll be more than happy to answer that. Thank you very much for joining this session. Have a nice day.